Something strange is happening right now. Everyone that I talk to seems to be exhausted. Coworkers, even teenagers who haven't even started their careers yet. And the strange part is that many of them aren't actually overworked. It made me start to wonder, are we using the wrong word to describe what is actually happening to us? So I don't know if it's just me or if you all are noticing this as well. Almost everyone that I talk to these days, they seem to say the same exact thing, that they are exhausted. And if I'm being honest, I feel it too. Most of the people that I know describe it in the same exact way. They say they feel like they're burnt out. My friends say it, people I work with say it, and it feels like you hear it almost everywhere these days. So I have two friends in Germany that recently went into rehab for burnout. I have a nephew in India who's 23 years old and burnt out to the point where he's losing his hair and is now on meds to manage his stress. Most of my friends' kids here in the USA that are in college are depressed, tired, but yet none of them have worked a day in their life. And for the longest time, I connected burnout directly to physical and mental labor at work. Because when we talk about burnout, that's usually what we used to mean in the past. Long hours of work, pressure to perform at your job, mental exhaustion. But recently, the statement that burnout is directly related to work seems to be a contradiction in today's culture. People say that they're burnt out even when they're not working. Another prime example is Sunday evenings. The weekend is almost over. People have had 2 days off, no deadlines, no meetings, no real pressure that's related to work, and yet the same sentence keeps coming up, that I am exhausted. And honestly, I feel it too. When it's Sunday evenings, most of the times I feel so drained that part of me almost looks forward to Monday, just so I can get back into the same structure again. And that's when the connection between burnout and work stopped making sense to me. Because weekends used to be the time when we all recovered from the entire week. But now most of us arrive on Sunday evening feeling mentally drained, just as we did on a Friday evening. So now the question becomes, what exactly are we exhausted from? If rest days leave us feeling completely depleted, then maybe the problem isn't simply work. So traditionally, burnout meant something very specific. The definition of the word burnout has evolved. Prior to the rise of the instant information-driven world that we live in today, the definition of burnout was categorized by chronic, long-term work-related stress leading to emotional exhaustion, cynicism, and reduced professional efficiency. It described people who were exhausted from prolonged effort at work, from constantly pushing themselves beyond what they could sustain. So professions like doctors and nurses, caregivers, in demanding environments where the emotional and mental load never really stops. Or it was also people, that were stuck in a job that had impossible workload or an asshole of a boss. That also caused level of stress. But what many of us are experiencing today feels different from the traditional definition of burnout. People today say that they're exhausted, and at the same time, their minds never seem to slow down. They sit down to relax, and within seconds, they're checking for something. We're all guilty of that. We're checking our phones for messages, for news, for social media. And then we get into this thing of one video after another, one notification after another. And before we realize it, an entire hour goes by. And somehow we feel more tired than we did before. And that's what made me start questioning the word burnout. If you look at how most of us spend our days now, the amount of information that we absorb is enormous. Messages, emails, headlines, videos, conversations, updates. Our minds are constantly taking something in. And once I started thinking about it in that way, I began noticing something else. Even the simplest parts of everyday life have become mentally exhausting. Take something ordinary like buying groceries. Years ago, you would walk into a grocery store, you would pick up what you wanted, what you needed, you pay for it, and then you go home. Olive oil was just olive oil. Chicken was chicken, and eggs were eggs. Now, even the simple task feels so freaking draining and different. You stand in the aisle, and suddenly there are 10 different things to think about. Is this healthy? Is this brand trustworthy? Is this organic? Where was it produced? Is the packaging safe? So you start remembering things that you heard or seen online. Things like seed oils are bad, certain foods cause inflammation. This brand is good and that brand is terrible. Even olive oil is no longer just olive oil. Now it has to be single origin, cold pressed from a specific region, and suddenly a quick decision has turned into a full-on research. The same thing happens with almost everything else. Buying clothes used to be simple. You walked into a store, you tried it on, and if you loved it and you could afford it, then you bought it. You took it home with you. Now, even buying a simple shirt turns into an hour or longer of comparing options online. Which company is better? Which company is cheaper? Is the quality good? Was it created ethically? What do the reviews say? Will it arrive on time? So even a small decision pulls in more information. And every piece of information asks our brain to process something, evaluate something, decide something. And when this happens dozens of times in a single day, the mind slowly fills with noise. And after thinking about this for a while, something started to become a little bit more clear for me. Burnout used to come from doing too much. Today, a lot of exhaustion comes from having to process too much. Too much information, too many choices, too many signals asking for our attention. I'm convinced that the human brain was never designed to evaluate this much input all day long. When you look at life this way, the exhaustion many people feel starts to make a little more sense. Your exhaustion is not always a result of working too hard. At one point, that was the primary cause of burnout. Nowadays, it is sometimes a result of having to process too much information, too many signals, too many decisions, too many things asking for our attention at the same time. And the human brain was never designed to live in the environment that we've created for ourselves. Having to process this much information, this amount of information, is a result of the speed in which information is coming at us. And information is also a culprit in all of this. So if you look at information, for most of history, information moved slowly. We moved from sending messages on foot to mailing letters, to emails, to sending SMS messages, to now direct messages and notifications. Conversations used to happen face to face. News used to travel at the pace of a day. Now it's at a pace of a notification. Even buying groceries, it used to be planned. I remember my parents used to sit down on the weekend and look through flyers and plan out the grocery list for the entire week, which actually still happens in Germany, which I find very rare. But in the USA and even in India, when we spend an entire month there, most everything has become instant. My point is that there were long stretches of time when nothing was demanding our attention, when things were pre-planned, when weekends actually felt like weekends. We had moments of quiet, moments where our mind could take a break from all of the chaos that went on the entire week. Today, those moments are becoming rare. And one of the biggest culprit is the phone, the invention of the smartphone. So we all know that the invention of the smartphone came with a lot of benefits, but sometimes I feel the baggage outweighs the benefits. The phone is always in our hand. And it's regardless of the generation. At least my generation and the older generation, we knew a life without this device. And for the younger generation, especially Gen Z, they have no idea what life was like without the dependency on instant information. So about 96% of Gen Z take their phone with them to the bathroom, while they're sitting on the toilet. And I know this sounds absurd when you say it out loud, but that is the reality that we live in now. The next message, the next headline, the next update, it's like it's become part of the oxygen that we breathe. If our brain never experiences silence, how can we ever feel the calm and the rest? This is why we feel tired today. And it's not always from effort, not always from physical labor like we used to in the past, but now it's from constant mental activity, from the pressure of always having to pay attention. And maybe that's why so many describe themselves as burnt out. And not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, but because the modern world asks our human brain to handle an amount of stimulation that it was never designed for. So the real challenge today might not simply be learning how to work less, but it might be learning how to create moments of quiet without constantly being bombarded with information. Moments where nothing is asking for something. Moments where your attention is not being pulled into 10 different directions. Moments where your mind can finally slow down. Because sometimes the most powerful rest is silence. Let me know what your thoughts are on this subject. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video, and I'll see you in the comments.